Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Maria Mathai, and welcome to the second day of Innovate and Inspire, the Canada series of virtual professional development sessions, which is organized by CBSE. Unfortunately, Dr. Saha, Director, Skills and Training, could not be with us right now, but we expect him to join us a bit later. And when he's there, then we will obviously hear from his thoughts, which is the context of this Canada series, because this is his baby and he has conceptualized this. But before we begin the formal program, I would like to give all of you a reminder on a few housekeeping notes. I would request all of you to keep your microphone on mute for the duration of the session. For those of you who are viewing this in Google Meet, especially if you're watching on your laptop or computer, please do not click on the Present Now button at the bottom right of your screen. If you accidentally click that, that will interrupt the speaker session. And Rashmi, if that happens, I guess you will have to click on the Present Now at your end again to get back to the screen. Also, make use of the chat box on the right for your questions, and please do ensure that you include your name and your school, city, everything when you're asking the question. We have, our team is monitoring both the CBSE blog as well as the chat box over here, and we will be addressing the questions at the end of the session. So yesterday, we started off with a thought-provoking panel discussion on the future of education post-COVID. Today's program kicks off with an introductory note by the Trade Commissioner for the Government of Ontario at the High Commission of Canada here in Delhi. We will then have an eminent digital learning leader from Canada's oldest educational TV service and a leading distance education company conducting today's session on the subject, Leading School Transformation in an Era of Digital Learning. But first, let me invite Kapil Malhotra, Trade Commissioner for Government of Ontario, to share an overview of Ontario's digital learning expertise. Over to you, Kapil. Kapil, I think you'll have to unmute yourself. I see that for whatever reason, Kapil is not able to be audible, and I see Dr. Saha has joined. So I would request Dr. Jyoti Gupta to introduce Dr. Saha. So, and in the meantime, I'll also check as to why our Ontario rep has not been able to join us. Jyoti? Okay, so I think we seem to be in a situation where both our speakers are not audible. So, sir, I'm just going to take over. And Dr. Biswajit Saha, as you know, is Director Training and Skills Education for CBSE. Mr. Saha is the Director of Vocational Education at CBSE since 2012. And prior to joining CBSE, he worked as Assistant Professor at the Tripura Institute of Technology, Government of Tripura, DIA, and National Informatics Center, and the Ministry of ICT. Dr. Saha, as I mentioned, is the key person behind this program, and he has been instrumental in conceptualizing this Canada series. Dr. Saha, I would like to invite you now to give the context on this series.
Yeah, so I think in start some technical glitch, I believe our good colleague might have faced. So I'm sorry. I don't think there will be much glitch. It will be over by some time if it is from our side. So first of all, good evening to all of you, and good morning to Dr. Reshmi. So this is a good sessions we have started yesterday, and Honorable Chairman CBSE has inaugurated. So this is a platform through which we are trying to exchange idea, so that ultimately the stakeholder at both sides can be benefited. One way, the learning from the expert, other way, giving appropriate feedback to the leader from higher educational institutes in Canada. And today, of course, a professional who is incidentally, I was just going through her profile. Incidentally, she has taken educations from Delhi, and I believe that strong bonding with India and know the antiquated education systems here, as she brought up from this place. Now, with respect to this context of this kind of webinar and masterclass series, I believe uh, through these things we are supposed to learn from each other, and ultimately to give that extreme benefit to the student. And moreover, our school leader nowadays are very much enthusiastic to receive new learning from different global academicians, and ultimately it is a true benefit to the students. So with this, there are several other programs are there in days to come, both from that Canadian university systems and also from the other nations, both from America, Singapore, and other nations. So truly, this technology is giving us the platform, and I must congratulate and thanks Maria. In a very short time, she managed to get a positive consent from the educationist from Canada and professionals who are highly placed at different institute to share their experience. And again, it's a win-win situations for both of us. Means country perspective, I strongly believe our school leader and principals, they have a several dynamisms in spite of various odd situations, connectivity issue, digital divide, and other issue. But every day, some new methodologies they are adapting, and their personal innovations is actually some way we are able to connect with the student community, and that connection is more important. No matter there are place, whether from Kashmir to Kanyakumari or from Assam to Gujarat, or even the principals who are facing different protocols, who are from our foreign nations, especially from Middle East and other Asian and African countries. So the different protocols they are seeing, but despite of that, there is no less initiative in their effort, and in fact they are trying to engage in a different way, be it radio, community radio, or be it their physical messenger. So ultimately they are trying to reach so that rather to ensure the learning is properly happening right at the classroom, be it online or at home. And I believe this kind of experience again strengthen their initiative, and more closely they can work with the uh, educationists and professionals of Canada, and a strong relationships not only through this virtual 1 hour sessions, but more and more interactive sessions will be there thereafter, and more engagement in terms of whether it is research-based initiative or higher education initiatives. So altogether, we want to closely work with you, and our teacher and principal will also take part, active parts. And I will request all the principals who are very much in these sessions internally, and even those who are participating through our live streaming, YouTube live streaming. So please participate, give your comment through the blog, and also through chat box. You put your questions so that moderator Maria and others can flag all those issues, and it could be a perfect interactive sessions. Although physically we are not meeting, but it's a platform through which we can take the maximum advantage. With this, wish you all the best. And once again, welcoming the today's resource persons to the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saha, for that. And I think one of the positives of having technology on our side is that we are able to conduct this session and reach out to people across the country, like you said, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the North to the South. And we have the facility of experts from Canada. I think we have sorted out our technology issues, and I see Kapil is here. So, Kapil, can we have your comments on Ontario's digital expertise?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maya. And thank you, Dr. Saha, for setting up the tone. A very good evening to the ones joining in from India and to the ones joining in from Canada. At the outset, I would like to thank CPSC and all the teachers for the initiative of training the trainers, especially in these unprecedented times. I have seen the way teachers are patiently teaching in these days, and kudos to all the teachers for having pivoted to the new methodologies at this speed, scale, and openness. Having said so, I feel blessed that Ontario has got their bit to contribute to the initiative of adopting to the new technologies and methodology. And special thanks to you, Maria, for all your efforts and initiatives in pulling it together. So Ontario and India have a long history of working together. Thanks to the dedication of government and business leaders of past and present who have made this thing happen. India, as of now, is one of the biggest source of students for Canada. And to set, so Ontario houses the fourth largest technology cluster in the world, which is Toronto, and we are all geared up with the next generation technological requirements in digital learning platforms, which include online learning management system, on-demand stream video lectures, be it live online lectures or seminars, adaptive learning, simulation learning, be it analytics, AI, augmented or virtual reality. We have it all and are willing to work with global education community to take it to the next level. Canada have been offering online learning for around 15 years or more, but at the pace at which it has evolved and implemented in these times is unparalleled. I believe digital learning is the ongoing state of evolution, and definitions will need to evolve to reflect changing practices. Ontario holds a strong position in digital learning sector. The province recently unveils an exports 7-point summer learning plan for Ontario students to ensure students have every opportunity to continue their learning through these pandemic times. These online learning programs are being expanded to reach more students in Ontario's history to ensure they remain on track to start the 2021 school year with the confidence and knowledge required to succeed. I believe two steps are critical in making the shift to digital-based learning. Schools must cultivate the scale needed to make online learning platform profitable. Collaborations across the school are needed to give students more choices and specialization. An inclusive approach to alternate learning must be adopted, and this can be achieved either through experiential learning or micro credentials that provide students flexibility in how and where to obtain academic credits. At the same time, educators will need to integrate the tools of augmented reality, machine learning, personalized education to students' unique learning pathways. I would also like to highlight some of the initiatives which government has adopted to support digital learning. So we have come up with a lot of resources for learning at home, which are more user-friendly learn at home sites, which was launched and adapted. Learning sites will be developed, provided resources to help students refresh their learning in preparation for year 2021 courses. access to services, tools, and technologies. As a part of Government of Ontario, aim to build up and improve the learning at home program. Government is working with non-profit organizations and business to offer comprehensive suite of services and resources to Ontario-based boards to support students, parents, educators during the current school closure. A suite of services, tools, and technology was provided to delivery and more quality online services and techniques. We have provided more than 20 resources to provide learning resources. Kerala can access grade 9 for educators, such as lessons plans created by Ontario by educators, including educators. So the more than such platforms are providing these learning resources. The cable is limited data usage at a discount price. Educators and students, more than 100,000 discounted Chromebooks and more than 150,000 other tablets have been distributed to the students. We see that these are some of the initiatives, but as learning is a continuous process, it must not stop. And I'm sure and hopeful that this is just the beginning and it will go a long way. As I mentioned, that it is a continuous evolving process, and we all have to make our effort and devise methodologies to see to suit the
So, Kapil, I'm not sure if you are audible because I think your voice is not clear and your video has gone off and you've gone on mute. So, are you there? So I'm sorry. Yeah, Kapil, I don't think we can hear you or even see you. So I'm not sure, but I'm sorry to do this, but I think we will have to move on. So I think that we got most of your comments and we did learn a lot about what the Government of Ontario is doing. So thank you for your comments, and I'm sorry the tech did not work out as perfectly as it could have. But thank you. Thank you for joining us. Moving on, the COVID-19 pandemic has catapulted the vast majority of K-12 schools and teachers into what Canadian radio commentator Anna Kamenetz described as the biggest distance learning experiment in history. 3 weeks after the pandemic shuttered schools, teachers in Ontario began to lead the new effort with both live and pre-recorded lessons. Our speaker today, Rashmi Swaroop, has been in the middle of all this action. She is the Vice President of Digital Learning, as it is called. Her company is the Ontario Ministry of Education's Digital Learning Partner. Under Rashmi's leadership, the Digital Learning Division is creating online opportunities to support digitally enabled blended learning pedagogy and ensuring educational integrity to serve all students. She has been an educational leader in India, the Middle East, and Canada. Rashmi has won many awards for her work in the areas of instructional and innovative leadership, program innovation enhanced by technology, and excellence in equity. She has addressed principals in local and international school districts on topics such as the role of the principal in leading change, the effective use of data in instructional leadership, what it means to be a digital age educator, and school leadership and its influence on teacher practice. She is also a TED-Ed innovative educator, selected by TED Education for her contributions to inspire innovative ideas through virtual collaboration with the global education communities. Today, Rashmi is going to talk about leading school transformation in an era of digital learning. Over to you, Rashmi. I would request all the participants, you can pin Rashmi as the speaker and pin her video. So you would be able to see her screen at the maximum level. That is also an option.
Can you can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, namaskar, good evening, and a very warm welcome from Toronto, Canada, to all participants in India, Canada, and from other parts of the world. And a big thank you to Dr. Saha for that warm introduction and sharing how we are so globally connected, wherever we may have grown or reached in our journey path. As a world, we are now in a global village, and I still have very strong ties and will continue to have with India. And thank you, Mr. Malhotra, for sharing what Ontario is doing to support students and staff with learning in these difficult times. And that Learn at Home program is one place where teachers, principals, and students can all go to find resources to help them to be independent, distant digital learners. I'm delighted to join you virtually, regardless of the distance of more than 11,000 kilometers from here to India. Today, a common purpose brings us together, that of finding ways to provide quality teaching and learning to our students in today's changed landscape. As an educator, in whatever role you may be, you are all leaders. And your commitment and passion for education makes a difference in the lives of students you serve. And I want to begin by acknowledging the work you do and sharing my heartfelt appreciation. In today's session, I will explore 3 areas that will provide you with ideas, actions, and suggestions for transforming your schools in a digital world. What is happening in the world around us? We will begin by understanding the changing world. You will learn about adaptive leadership because that is the need of the time in order to redefine your roles in administration and pedagogical leadership. You will gain insights on what are some of the things you can do to be a lead learner and how you're going to support your staff in transitioning to online teaching and learning. It was 1st January, New Year Day 2020, but it feels like a long time ago. I remember how excited everyone was as we were entering a new decade of the 21st century. But little did we know how this year was going to unfold. And by March, the world had changed in ways that we could never have imagined. And no one was left untouched by this pandemic. It showed us how fragile human life is, and it humbled us. And the adaptability to change for survival that Darwin speaks about is what is needed in education today. Talking about change, when I reflect on my career journey, I realize that change has been my constant companion. From a school in a small town in Bhilai, Madhya Pradesh, to a school in the metropolitan city of Mumbai. From a CBSE school in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to a technology-focused school in Toronto, Canada. From a teacher, a curriculum leader, program team leader, principal, superintendent of education, to my current role in leading digital learning at TVO. For me, it has always been about questioning the status quo and then thinking about how will I transform the landscape to make a difference and improve student outcomes. And three underlying principles that drive my leadership and help me respond to change proactively are curiosity, context, and commitment. Be curious, ask questions, hear all voices, students, parents, administrators, staff, teachers, because that will help you inform your decisions. Listen to the history and different perspectives, because based on this data, a picture will emerge. Because often when you ask the why question, when you say to somebody, why do you do this? Very often you get the answer, we have always done it like this. But how will you change that thinking by saying, what if we were to try something different? Also, it's important to understand and know your context. What's your location? What's your community? And build on that context. Because then you can adapt your leadership to meet the needs of the school. Your school could be in a rural or urban location. It could be in a low or high socioeconomic community. Cultural expectations could be different. And so it is important to seek to understand and then be understood. Commitment is very important in bringing teams together to plan, collaborate, implement, and act. But we also have to be mindful when we begin any new action, there can be an implementation dip. But with confidence and care, you can lead your staff through that period with hope and optimism. And it's important to let them know that making mistakes is all right. Review, revise actions as needed, but do not waver. Sounds hard, doesn't it? But then who said that leadership is an easy role? Think about what your top three guiding principles of leadership are that help you manage and lead change. This is a picture of me on my exploration journey on Jersey Island in the English Channel. And from there to Ontario, I would love to share with you how change has been a part of TVO's journey. TVO began as a broadcast station, and today it is a digital learning agency that supports student learning. It was formed in 1970 with the Ministry of Education's mandate to bring education to the people of Ontario through the power of television, because that was the 1970s. This year, we are celebrating TVO's 50th anniversary and its transformation as a modern, multi-platform digital learning publisher that allows Ontarians of all ages to access our content whenever they want, wherever they want, and on whatever device they choose. You can see on the screen some of the digital learning resources that TVO provides for students and teachers in Ontario. They link to curriculum such as math, science, language, as well as social emotional learning. One of the digital learning resources that you see here has an amazing history of change, and it continues to evolve. TVO ILC. More about TVO ILC. Ontario's distance learning journey began 94 years ago, as you see in the picture on the top, in 1926. It was a school on wheels, bringing teachers and classrooms on trains to remote Ontario communities that did not have access to schools. By the 1950s, as Ontario's economy and education structures evolved, the railway school program transitioned to other modes of distant learning. And then in 1984, this program was officially named Independent Learning Center, the ILC. And in 2002, the Ministry of Education transferred the management of ILC to TBO. And over the years, the ILC has evolved from print to PDF to digital format and has become a technology hub. It offers enriched online courses for grades 9 to 12 students in Ontario, as well as to students from over 75 countries across the world. Today, TBO ILC is the largest online high school in the province, with 20,000 annually enrolled students on an average. Our innovative and self-directed curriculum of 144 courses is available to students 14 years of age and up from anywhere in the world, and is designed to prepare learners for top university and college placements. The ILC courses have evolved over the years and continue to be reviewed in an iterative cycle of continuous improvement to meet the needs of learners in an ever-changing world. In this ever-changing world, the speed of change has become exponential and disruptive. And in his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, economist Klaus Schwab writes about the incremental pace of change from the first to the second to the third to the fourth industrial revolution. This is the digital revolution, and it is disrupting almost every industry in every country. And we in education knew it was coming and had started integrating by using blended learning in schools. But while schools were adapting to this change at their own pace, with the technological resources they had, the pandemic created a situation where schools shut down overnight and then had to move from in-person delivery model to a fully online model without adequate time to prepare for this overwhelming change. And this sudden shift has drastically altered the way we teach and learn, and leadership has had to adapt to this new reality. As an adaptive leader, you have a key role in being successful today, because being adaptive means making some hard choices. Remember, your students are at the center of all decision-making, because the hard choices you make should always be framed in the premise of how our actions will support student achievement and well-being. Think about what will you preserve? The foundational principles and purpose of education and the practices that go with it, the big ideas. And this will bring hope. And what will you let go? The processes, the how we have done things, but are not able to do now. And this will create a sense of loss. What will you build on? It'll be the new tools that will help you continue your core work of instructional leadership. This will require some unlearning, some new learning, and then relearning. And what will you innovate? These will be the new approaches. And this will include, meaning taking risks. As is evident today, leadership is not only about managing the change, but adapting to it. For schools are no longer places you go to physically within the comfort of four walls with a start and end time. Schools are now places without boundaries, wherever you, your staff, and students are learning, and whenever you are learning. For that, you have to make some leadership considerations, which should be embedded in your processes and actions. Equity is one of them. It is about understanding what we must do to ensure that every student, regardless of their background or circumstances, is provided the opportunity to be successful. Inclusion has a great deal to do with how each of us is feeling at any given time and how we are made to feel. We not only feel valued and equal as individuals, but also together as a collective in the class, in the school, and the community, which is made of each one of us. And when each one of us feels included, that creates a sense of belonging, safety, and happiness. Having a growth mindset is a very important consideration because unlike a fixed mindset, it is one where you do not give up on a student or staff's ability to do better. The growth mindset drives motivation and achievement. Students succeed when you believe in them and they believe in themselves. A growth mindset also applies to oneself in your ability to believe in your own self. I'm reminded of my email signature line, which has a quote that inspires staff and students. It says, "Difficult things take a long time. Impossible things take a little longer." And I truly believe in that. And as we lead, we must consider leading with empathy and finding alternate ways to connect with students, teachers, and parents when we can't meet them in person. Listen to them, listen to their lived experiences. These are tough times when families may be dealing with job loss, illness, lack of technology, lack of space in homes, and more. Be empathetic. And of course, how could I forget mentioning unintended consequences? Very interesting phrase, because often you will see that leadership actions have some unintended consequences that can be desirable at times and undesirable at other times. And those considerations are very important. Let me give you some examples using if-then statements from the theory of action. If students have to stay at home during COVID-19 due to school closure, they will be safe. The intent was to keep students safe, and truly that happened. But one unintended consequence was that this impacted some students, their social and emotional well-being, causing symptoms such as anxiety and loneliness and social isolation. Another example, a decision. If teachers can teach online, students will be able to learn at home. What was the intention? Avoiding loss of learning. What was unintended was the concern from parents of increased screen time, when in the past, you may have given a contradictory message of asking parents to not allow their children too much screen time. But unintended consequences can be positive as well. For example, if a decision is to publish a success story of a student who won a national math award, it will motivate other students. Other students were indeed motivated. And the unintended consequence was that a technology company came across this article and donated 50 computers to the school as part of their corporate social responsibility. Being aware of unintended consequences enables you to be prepared with a response that would acknowledge the concerns while continuing to find ways to alleviate those concerns. So your leadership considerations are driven by your emotional intelligence and cognitive thinking. And being an adaptive leader is about using these considerations to inform your leadership moves. How do you embrace uncertainty when by human nature, we are all comfortable with certainty? Because we feel good about being in control of our circumstances. During COVID times, we are in an ambiguous zone with not much clarity, and that is creating discomfort. But when you embrace uncertainty, you encourage innovative thinking and finding solutions that will lead to a new and better future. You also need to think about empowering learners and learning. Because when we give students voice and choice in what they learn and how they learn, we empower them. They develop self-confidence and become independent learners. Going deeper with data, we all are familiar with data and use it regularly. But let us differentiate between data-driven leadership and data-informed decision-making. The former is about data determining your decisions, whereas being data-informed is about bringing your critical thinking and analysis to the decisions. Because you have multiple sources of data that you have access to. There's quantitative data, qualitative, perception, program, process, and more data. Think about intersecting the different data sets and deconstructing them, because then you start seeing patterns that show you where your successes and where your gaps are. And this will provide you with explicit and focused areas of improvement. It's important to collaborate through networks because we are not alone. We are so well connected. And CBSC does an incredible job with professional learning for school leaders. And it's important that you take the learning from these sessions to your schools and leverage this learning with your staff to create a culture of learning. Lean on principal networks locally and globally. Develop the profession of a professional culture of learning, monitor global trends, and form collaborative networks. And being responsive and proactive is significant because when a crisis occurs, a reactive mode is activated. And in a reactive mode, it's a survival reflex. Because once the reality sinks in, being responsive and acting calmly is the next step. As school leaders, you are responsive when you anticipate the needs of your students and staff and you address them. Proactive mode is about looking ahead and being prepared for any eventuality based on your current experience. Keep these leadership moves in mind as you do the work of school transformation. Being a leader also means being a learner. By being a learner, your teachers see you as a role model and readily join you in the learning journey. And of course, a cup of tea. Chai is always so invitational. Only, sadly, it has to be virtual right now. I miss the learning conversations over a cup of tea. Now that we've had our cup of tea, let us immerse ourselves into learning about the new online pedagogy. The new pedagogy is emerging with new ways of leading, teaching, and learning in an online environment. Let us discover how students learn online, what has changed when we don't see them in person and as a class together. What are the implications for teacher practice and learning how to design online lessons? And for many teachers and schools, technology has not been part of their instructional repertoire. But now it has become a requirement. We need to meet teachers wherever they are and help them feel supported. Show them how to use technology as a meaningful tool, and let us all be learners. Let's begin by looking at students as online learners. Engaging content and meaningful activities make online learning relevant for students. When the topics interest them, they enjoy learning with appropriate guidance from teachers. They know their voice matters, and it leads them to become self-directed learners who are able to see the relevance of their learning to the real world. They find it very important to make connections to the real world. And they're no longer satisfied to be consumers of knowledge, which is provided by a teacher or textbook. They want to be challenged. They're excited about knowledge creation and knowledge mobilization. In an online environment, students prefer a blend of synchronous and asynchronous learning, because when as a teacher, you're explaining a concept using online conferencing tools, they will participate in the virtual classroom. But when they have to do the work, they prefer the asynchronous mode in which they can learn and work at their pace and at their own convenience. Students can also learn differently with access to digital content. They can use mobile delivery, use new forms of assessment that the teachers provide, learning analytics to guide choice and progress, because they can self-assess with learning analytics. They can interact and communicate with students from across the world. And I think it's very important to understand online safety and digital footprint for our students when they're online. Think when you were in a regular school, wasn't physical safety of your students paramount? Similarly, in an online safe environment, safety is very critical. Online safety procedures must be communicated to students, parents, and teachers. And some of the essentials for online safety include knowing what to post online in emails or social media, learning which sites are authentic and where fake news is being propagated, not interacting with strangers. Along with online safety, students should be taught about the long-term impact of their digital footprint, which is their online identity. Nothing gets permanently deleted on the web. We must remember that and remind students. And employers today will check the digital footprint of a candidate before offering a job. So right from the get-go, it's important what kind of a digital footprint students are going to create. For teachers, online course design and delivery, there are some things that you bring with you that you will continue to use for online course design and delivery. And there's some things that will be new. The principle of backward design in developing lesson plans for in-person learning is the same for online teaching, because they ask the questions beginning with the end in mind. What do you want your students to learn, know, and create? You keep curriculum expectations in mind. What are the skills you want to prepare them for? What evidence of learning do you need? And what activities will you create for them to demonstrate the evidence of learning? And then you start developing for each lesson a learning goal and a success criteria, because this provides clarity to students about what they are going to learn in a lesson. Success criteria is about knowing how a student will be successful, what they need to demonstrate, and how they have met the learning goals. Some teachers are able to create and co-construct success criteria with students. And that makes it in a student-friendly language for all students to understand and manage their own learning. In an English lesson, if a learning goal is about reading comprehension strategies, such as inferencing, predicting, summarizing, and visualizing, the success criteria could be that the student is able to apply those reading strategies to find meaning in a variety of texts. Focusing on competencies while teaching content prepares students with the skills of the future. But these skills need to be inculcated. And the kind of skills that students need to learn through the content in all subjects can be called competency skills or transferable skills, as the word is in Ontario curriculum. And we know that these skills include critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, to name a few. And inquiry-based learning, when you use that as a task and assessment, you empower students because it also lends itself to differentiation. Each student could have a different inquiry questions. And this makes the students involved in their learning from the beginning because they can choose their own inquiry based on the curriculum topic. They investigate and build new understanding, meaning, knowledge, and they develop critical thinking skills. Let us look at authentic assessment. What is authentic assessment? When you are gauging a student's learning by providing a task and assessing the student for the process, the skills, engage in, and the tangible end product they provide you. It is not only about a singular yes/no answer or one assessment. An assessment for, of, and as learning is a way to assess knowledge and learning before, during, and after the lesson, because it helps teachers shape the instruction accordingly. And in Ontario curriculum, assessment is based on 4 components of the achievement chart. And these are knowledge and understanding, thinking, communication, and application. And it is expected that in their assessment, a teacher covers the 4 components rather than dominantly testing content knowledge. There are rubrics and descriptive feedback that form an important part of the assessment. In online course delivery, teachers can also ask students to create e-portfolios, online journals, and they can also use learning analytic tools. What about students who do not have access to technology? Teachers can ask them to create a notebook portfolio or journal to be assessed at a later date so the students can continue their learning and not let technology become a barrier. Now that we've explored how students learn online and how you use the design thinking approach in online lesson planning, the third element of the emerging online pedagogy is the tool of technology. You must look at the objective of the task, and that should drive your selection of technology for integration with the task, and not selecting the technology first and trying to fit the objective of task to it. It is important how you make the decision to select the technology. Before you is the SAMR model: substitution, augmentation, modification, redefinition. This is a way to understand the possibilities of technology integration. But bear in mind, they are not hierarchical. To those who are new to technology, I will say, be kind to yourself. You've been tossed into this technology ocean without knowing how to swim. You are learning and doing a great job, and shortly you will start exploring what else is out there. The more adept you will get with technology, you will be able to choose the right tools based on your tasks. At present, most staff are using technology as substitution, a replacement for a traditional tool. What you will find is that your students will teach you more about technology, for while you may be a digital immigrant, they are digital natives. And so the learning continues. And the TVO ILC courses are examples of courses designed using the 3 elements of the emerging online pedagogy that I just shared. In our courses, curriculum is student-centered, differentiated, and grounded in transferable skills. There is explicit use of instructional strategies, such as the KWL chart and anticipation guides. Metacognition and reflection is always part of the learning process, and the content is culturally responsive and inclusive. the spirit of learning and leading together, I want to share a story that I read recently, which is a great example of self-directed learning, and it inspired me. It happened recently. Cleon Papadimitriou, a 20-year-old Greek college student, was stuck in Scotland where he was studying with no way to return to Athens while flights were shut down due to the pandemic. So with no other option, he decides to bike 2,000 plus miles and get home. So he shares this news with his father, and the father agrees reluctantly on one condition, that they will set up an app which would allow his family to constantly track him where he is and know where he is. So on May 10th this year, with canned food, peanut butter bread, sleeping bag, tent, and equipment for his bike, he begins his journey. But at the end of each day, he writes down his progress, tracks the next day's path, and checks in with family and friends, and reaches his home on June 27th after a 48-day journey. Cleon said that this journey taught him about his strengths, limits, and weaknesses. He hoped that his trip inspires someone else to go out of their comfort zone and try something new, something big. In his words, when you attempt to reach a really ambitious goal, whether you achieve it or you don't, you will have improved. You will learn things about yourself, and you will surprise yourself. What a strong message for all of us in education. I'm certain there were teachers in his life who inculcated these skills in him, teachers like you. I saw in this story examples of experiential learning, journaling, communication, critical thinking, problem solving, application, transferable skills, knowledge creation, knowledge mobilization, technological tools and skills. The journey of school transformation has taken you on the unknown path. And the exciting part is that it is full of opportunities because you're opening new doors. When the traditional teaching doors have closed, you have left the comfort zone of your school building. So why not be adventurous and try something new? Learn things about yourself and surprise yourself. Your resilience, perseverance, dedication, and care for your staff and students is yielding results, and I applaud your efforts and endeavors. It has been my pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for joining me. I wish you the very best. If you would like to learn more about TVO's digital resources, especially about our grade 9 to 12 ILC credit courses that are available globally, here is the contact information. And thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. I think there was so much content in that presentation, and there was so much of information that in some of the cases I could see that people are taking notes. So thank you for a very, very informative session. I would like to open the Q&A. We do have some of the questions which have already been put on the blog, but I would like Dr. Jyoti Gupta to lead with the opening question. Jyoti, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I have unmuted myself, Maria. What a wonderful session. Rashmiji, you've really touched the very relevant points, and I think all of us are struggling across the world with the new form of pedagogy. And very aptly and rightly said by you that all of us are in a new paradigm, and I think all of us are thrown in together here, and we have to take up from here, and it is automatically coming to all of us. There is this debate in India about the screen time for the children, and I can see those questions on the blog as well, where there is a lot there is a lot being said about the increased screen time for the children. So where do we draw a line? Do we do the synchronous classes? Do we do the asynchronous classes? how much can we engage the children, for the active screen time? How much should we engage the children through the flipped classes? So, what is a balance, and what kind of classes are happening across the world, across the globe? We have K-12 schools. So, children coming to us are from 3 plus to 18 plus. So, do you have any suggestion, any advice there?
I think this question is at the heart of every educator about a student's well-being without impacting the outcomes for their learning. And definitely, screen time is one such issue that parents and staff are grappling with. So as you have said, that where do you strike the balance? Because definitely sitting in front of a screen does impact the eyes. So how do we create lessons that will help students not to be glued to their computer all the time? And you're mentioning synchronous and asynchronous. I think it is important for us to talk about online learning doesn't mean that physical presence in front of a screen. So as you mentioned, there'll be times that when students, especially the younger students, how do we ask them to go look what's around the house? If they're going to learn measurement, what are some objects that go around? And it kind of becomes a play-based learning. And then the device can only be used for reporting that learning. So think of the ratio of the time that they will be in front of the screen. It's definitely important that, like a class, we tell them what the learning will be, what they need to do, and then we should let them go and be just independent, dream of things. And when they'll come back with the task, you will find that they have come back with more than you expected. They have come with more questions that they are curious about. A flipped classroom is also a great idea. So reading is not limited to the screen. We must always continue to read in print format as well, because that is not so much impacting our eyes because of the glare and the colors. So what reading does in a flipped classroom is students have come, they have read questions, so they have done the learning first, and then the classroom becomes a discussion. So allowing those options for students to make sure that they are not always in front of a screen would give them that capability to understand that learning doesn't mean sitting in front of the computer. And helping parents also understand that, because sometimes students will tell parents, oh, I'm studying, I need to be in front of the computer. And at the same time, they could be chatting with someone, and that's their kids, that's their nature. So if we kind of said, no, your teacher has delivered and explained to you what you need to do, so now you get off the computer and do it, they will understand, and it will really help them. And I've seen little kids with 2-3 hours in front of their computer, their eyes are kind of like, wide open, and they're feeling tired, they're rubbing their eyes. And it's so important that their physical well-being is taken care of. So what is being done in some schools in Ontario, especially for high school students where the content delivery is very critical, that there's 45 minutes of teaching, then the teacher remains online. And that doesn't mean the teacher is sitting and looking at the screen. She's there. She could be sitting and reading, doing some work, planning and for something. But what that does is for students to know that they can come back at a certain time after 2 hours. But if a student has a question, they can reach out to you. So there are different ways. There will be no one way, but we must ensure with parents and with students, help them develop that responsibility of limiting their screen time.
Thank you so much. So, Maria, am I allowed one more question, please? So, Rashmiji, there is another thing that you said, that transacting the content should also ensure that the skills and competencies are being transferred to the children, and they are, they are developing their skills and competencies. So, a big question here is that how does one ensure experiential learning in this online platform? And how do you then assess the skills and competencies online?
Thank you, Jyoti. We could spend the next 1 hour talking about this. Isn't it such an important question? So I will try to kind of pick out a few key points. So, if you go back to the teacher-led classroom of a few decades ago, the teacher would read a lesson, talk about it, and then students were expected to do the questions at the end. And most of them were content questions. They checked your understanding of the knowledge. Okay, in which year did this World War II take place? How many countries participated, and so on. So what has happened with the move to online learning is all this information is available for students online. They don't have to keep it in their memory, as well as how is this going to help them for the future of work and the future world in which they will live. So from that content, the content is important, but it develops skills in them. So the questions that a teacher is going to create are more skill-based questions. And we were talking of competencies. I use the word transferable skills here in Ontario, because through learning one subject, they can apply those skills of critical thinking to all subjects. So, you could be asking a question about if they are looking at the environment, what do you think you can do differently to change the world? So you're making them think. So from the content in which they could have been learning about global warming, what are some of the things, what are they curious about? I have seen students very much into social justice situations. Why are girls not being educated in some parts of the world? They will go and find out, they'll explore, they'll do the research, but they'll learn the skills. They'll try to solve a problem. And that becomes the important piece in today's world, is to make them be critical thinkers, problem solvers. So how you look at your content, but create situations, and that inquiry-based learning really lends itself to it. And I'll quickly share one example, because what happens is you might be teaching a science lesson and the impact of things are human action on the environment. So in Toronto, it snows a lot in winter, and the roads are covered with snow. And we have snow plows that sprinkle salt to melt the snow. So the student asks the question, why do we do that? So they're learning based on the content. But is that the only way to do that? What is the impact? What are the negative, positive impacts? Can you think of other solutions? And that is how you develop the skills that they can apply, whether they were in a science class, a language class, a math class, or when they go out into the world. So that's the transition we have to do in our thinking as teachers.
Thank you so much. Maria, you can go ahead and do the live question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question which has been asked yesterday and has been asked multiple times by a lot of people today also, which is how do you handle digital learning in an environment where digital access is not accepted? Like, there are parts of the country where internet is not acceptable. There are parts in this city also where internet does not work. So when digital access is not given, how do you manage? And I thought you would be the right person to speak about this, because I know that Ontario has pockets where there is, like the rural Ontario, there is mountains and there is lakes, and there are a lot of areas within the state of Ontario itself which have this issue. So I think it would be really good for the principals over here to hear from you as to how you are managing the issue of digital access.
This is an issue that is facing everybody across the world, because as yet we don't have universal access to the internet and broadband technology, even in Ontario. So let me just share, Ontario is a very, very big province, the size of, I think it's France and Spain put together. And we have very big pockets where we don't have internet speed, it may be slow. So one has to be creative till such time that we get to the point when every student has that equity of access. So the Ministry of Education has committed and is investing in ensuring that broadband technology will be available, but it's phased in approach of a few years. So what do we do now? We can't say, okay, these students will have no learning. So now there are some options. They're not easy options. These are creative options at times. So sometimes you also find out, is it speed of the bandwidth? So what are the lessons we are creating that don't require too much heavy download? So are they downloadable? Can they be saved? The other part is, what can we learn without having access to the internet? Or is there a community center which has a hub where we can get the material and take it to those students? There's so many stories where teachers, community partners are stepping up. I would also say we have reached out to many community partners. And as you heard Mr. Malhotra talk about, that schools and school boards pulled up their budget to buy, devices, Chromebooks for their students, because most students didn't have that technology at home. And then there were the internet companies here that said, for the next 4 months, we are going to charge minimal or not charge and provide access. So counting on that social responsibility is one thing, but we can't just leave it to that. So the other thing I would say, as I mentioned earlier, we talk of writing an e-journal, e-portfolio. Why can't we encourage students to continue documenting the learning on paper? It doesn't take away the value of the hands-on and the text and the paper book learning. So that is very, very important. My other piece is that we also need to create lessons that how we can use a phone for a lesson. If it's not a smartphone, can I talk to my kids? Can I explain things? If it's a smartphone, can I send a picture? What can I do? But some of the things we did here, especially with TVO Kids, we got teachers to do live lessons for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon, and we called them Power Hour of Learning. And the reason for this was that there is television in more houses than there is the internet. And so in remote areas where there's television, and TVO is a public broadcast, so they are able to view it, there were teachers teaching online to students for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. So there are different ways to look for options. Yes, but that is something we need to continue to pursue, because it is a moral responsibility for us.
Maria, please unmute yourself. Maria, please unmute yourself.
I don't know. Okay. So one last question from Mr. Prashant Kumar Panda, who is the principal of GPS in Odisha. School transformation in respect of digital learning in India has had a lot of hiccups. Time has come to bring Intel Teach in Education, Microsoft and education giants, to name a few, to form a common platform to cater to the demands of tech-aided learning in countries like India for both the teacher and the taught. My question to Madam Rashmi is whether similar coming together platforms bringing tech and education giants is happening in Canada. And here I just add that there is this article doing the rounds by Scott Galloway. I don't know if you have seen it, where he's talked about how this is going to result in amalgamation of technology companies with big universities. So you will have Google at Harvard and Facebook with MIT. And in the Indian context, if I have to give an example, maybe I'll say Geo with IIT. But there is a lot. So how would you perceive something like this, and what would be your comment on this?
Well, companies have their own, I will use the word agenda and growth that they are looking at. Schools are more about serving students, and yet we need those companies to provide us with the technologies and resources to serve students. But from the examples that I'm hearing from you, because I've not read that article, I'm feeling that, yes, partnerships can leverage more for the students and staff, because then you have a dedicated technology organization. But is it about branding that organization? In education, whenever we use another company, we always make sure, well, we are not promoting you, we are not branding you as you're the best, but we are saying that we thank you for your support. So it's how we are going to shift that perspective, because we will definitely need to rely on the companies, because they have all gone into education. You see Microsoft, Google, in 30 years, what's education going to be? So in a way, it's a good thing that they have focused on education. It's where that marriage of the two will take place, and what will be the terms and conditions of that relationship will be important. So it's not a yes, no answer, it's the how we are going to do that.
Okay. So one last question, and I think this is the final last question from Mr. Ranganath Banerjee, Principal Ramakrishnan Mission Ashram School in Raigad. So he asks, what measures are you taking to meet the psychological need of teachers and children during the COVID and post-COVID situation?
Wow, that is at the heart of the, the unintended consequences of this situation that we find ourselves in. And we talk about social emotional learning, but very often we don't prioritize it. So there are staff and students facing issues. How do we support them? So in Ontario, we have what we call public health, and we go to them for ideas. But we also have what we call a social emotional learning continuum. That is, how are we mindful of how staff and students are feeling? What are they going through? So one of the things is a kind of a daily check-in if possible. So I have principals who at lunchtime will just say, this is our chat time. And so people can join and just have conversations. And from those conversations, you learn so much. So for example, I was checking in on one employee, and I learned this person lives alone in a one bedroom, not in one room apartment, and is now not allowed to go anywhere. And so twice he said, I'm having headaches, and it worried me. So I reached out to his boss and said, could you kind of talk more to him? Because I felt that something, needs to be done here. And so what they did is, as a group, they set up WhatsApp and what do we like? Some music, some thinking, or what do you like? Can you share? So it's going beyond those hours of learning and looking out what is important, what have they let go, and what can we do to restore that little bit of normalcy in their lives. And what we also have what is called an employee assistance program for all staff in all schools, that you can reach out. It doesn't come back, it's not reported to schools because of, people may feel, oh, what will somebody say or do? So reaching out to what supports are available outside, but as leaders, it's for us to make sure to check on that health, physical, social, emotional of people. We have become the go-to for all people, and that's what we do as leaders.
Okay, thank you so much, Rashmi. Dr. Sandeep Chen, are you there? I don't think Dr. Jain is here, so I would like to thank all the participants who are attending the session for your time and for the interactions, for putting up all the questions here on the chat stream here, as well as on the CBSE blog. Thank you so much, Rashmi. This session has been excellent. And it's always nice when you see principals taking notes, because you know that they have learned something. This has been a brilliant session. It has included a lot of information, it has included a lot of direction, and it has given ideas to us on how to take our particular educational institutions forward. Thank you.
Maria,
Thank you, everyone.